Welcome everyone. It is time for another episode of Old Roommates. This week on the show, we revisit the 1981 movie On Golden Pond. So put on an itty bitty teeny bikini, take a shallow dive into Golden Pond, and join us for this episode. You
Hey everybody, welcome to Old Roommates, the only podcast that revisits pop culture through a middle-aged lens. This is Brian.
And this is Christina.
And today we are revisiting On Golden Pond from 1981. It was released December 4th, 1981. We begin, as we always do, by talking about then. Christina, when was the first time you saw On Golden Pond?
I saw On Golden Pond December 13th, 1983. I'm just kidding.
That is quite the memory.
Yes, that would be, wouldn't it? I saw this not in the movie theater. I saw it at home.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I rented it. And I don't remember who I watched it with. But I remember liking the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little slow,
Okay.
but I liked it. I will always remember the scene with him getting lost in the woods. I found that to be terrifying and unexpected. I didn't expect to have such feelings in this movie. I thought it was more of like look at this nice little movie about an older couple. I remember there were a lot of I feel like there was a lot of fighting with Jane Fonda and Henry Fonda, the characters. Okay. But I liked it. I thought it was a pleasant movie. What about you, Brian?
So I definitely saw this on VHS and when I was a little kid. And I remember, or cable, whatever. But like I remember being little. I used to love this movie.
Oh.
I really did.
Wow.
And I was a weird kid. I liked dramas. I liked serious films.
Oh, yes.
And this was up there with say Ordinary People, although it's one of my favorite movies. This is not one of my favorite movies, but it was, and I think for that reason that you're talking about, that it was a little slow. It was a little and there's a lot of quiet moments and sweet old people. And for me, it felt very safe. I think at that point in my life, so it was 9, so whatever. So my parents were split up, and so it was a lot of tension and drama in the household. So on Golden Pond, even in light of, say Norman getting lost in the woods, or the boat accident, to me it was almost soothing. It's this happily married or married elderly couple being sweet to this kid that is not even their grandchild. It's just and it is a quiet moment on a lake, on a pond. Sorry, but I really like
Golden Lake.
But I watched it multiple times when I was younger, but I hadn't seen it in, how old am I? Probably 35 plus years.
I don't know if I've seen it more than once. I might have seen it one other time.
Definitely have seen it more than a few times.
Do you feel like you related to it because of the child in it was a boy, approximately your age, coming from a divorced family? Did you ever put that together at all?
I never did, but I also didn't really relate to him because he's so boy. He's very quintessential, outdoors, punk kid. Really wanting to go skinny dipping with his stepmom. We'll get into that.
Weird.
But so it was not. I didn't really relate, but that's a really interesting perspective. Maybe it was the dynamic of this kid finding some peace and tranquility. Yeah, maybe you're onto something there. I didn't cross my mind then, although it also didn't cross my mind now until you said it. But let's dive into now, right?
Yeah, so let's dive into now.
When did you? Yeah.
I think I watched it a couple weeks ago. And, I was looking forward to watching this movie because I hadn't seen it in a long time. And I remembered the general feeling of it as being sort of nice and calm. Yeah. It's over 2 hours long, though, yes? it was longer than I had expected it to be. I think it's close to 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that was surprising to me because I'm like, wow, what happens? Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, how did they do 2 hours worth of story in this? But it was fine. I liked Norman right away. The minute he walked into the house, I'm like, oh, he's just like this grumpy old man. And just kind of like says his piece. And Katherine Hepburn's character, and I'm not going to be, look, I know Katherine Hepburn is a legend and very respected, and I really like her and all of this. This is not going to be a bash session. However, one thing I did notice was I felt like the character of Ethel was a little, almost like a caricature to me in the way that she was so happy, so enthusiastic, jumping around, bebopping around. I kind of understood what they were trying to do in terms of the polar opposite of grumpy old man, but I just thought it was a little too much. They could have told her to just tone it down just a little bit, or I think it was directed that way on purpose, so it was more of like the direction. But aside from that, I really enjoyed, them opening up the house and him kind of walking around, and you can kind of get like he's just angry about being old and doesn't want to be treated like an old man and all that. But I enjoyed the first part of it for sure.
What I find interesting is this movie is based on a play, and it feels, especially in the beginning.
My gosh, I think I wrote that down somewhere. It
so much like
feels like a play.
And I agree with you. I think Norman Henry Fonda is played so low and downbeat. Like everything about him is almost under his breath, and he's angry, he's upset, and then there's Katherine Hepburn, it's played too high. Yes. Her voice, her energy, her love of life. And it's like, it almost is a little headache-inducing. And just because you're trying to meet them, but you can't meet both of them because they're, like you're saying, polar opposites. I mean,
right.
And so it's like, oh God. And I'm like, wow, I really don't remember this energy discrepancy.
I didn't remember
them.
It either. And
I will say, though, that as it went on, something occurred to me that never occurred to me way back then, is that, like, you said it's, I don't want to use the wrong words, but, like, I think you were kind of saying it was, did you say, like, too acting, or what did you say, too unbelievable, or
like
what was the word? Caricature.
Yeah.
And I wondered if there are moments where Ethel Thayer is her name, has to really dial up the energy because Norman is friggin' suicidal. Like, I wondered that because
I think that was a choice somebody made to dial that up.
The performance, of Katherine Hepburn, not the character.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I feel I loved it when I was a kid, and I just and again, I'm not going to bash it. It's just I was surprised that it took me a little bit longer to get into this time around.
Yes. That's a great way of saying it. I think we're both being very careful about how we're speaking about these legends.
Listen, this movie, I mean, really quick, I don't usually save trivia till the end, but I can tell you 10 Oscar nominations.
Yeah.
Back in 1980, so this would have been the 82 Oscars. 82. Yeah, because it's an 81 movie. Did I say that already? Just December 4th, 81? Yes. All right. So, Best Picture, Best Director. It won for Henry Fonda and Katherine Hepburn. Best Supporting Actress nomination. It also won for Screenplay. And the other nominations were Cinematography, Editing, Score, and Sound. I mean, this movie was beloved.
It was.
Made for $15 million. It made about $120 million.
Wow.
It was the second highest grossing film of the year of 1981. Behind what, Christina? 1981.
Oh my God.
You couldn't get two different movies if you tried.
1981?
We reviewed it.
We did?
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, interesting. I wouldn't have guessed
So isn't that crazy? The two
crazy.
highest grossing films in 1981 were Raiders of the Lost Ark and A Golden Pond. But, sorry, but dive right back into the pond.
So it was, again, like a little bit would you say, headache inducing a little bit. Just the two back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I loved him. I really did. I loved him. They remind me of a bit, in extreme cases.
Okay.
Of my in-laws.
Oh, really?
Just a little bit. My father-in-law is not as grumpy. My mother-in-law is not as high. But they did remind me of them. They're similar ages, although they seem a lot older in the movie. Like 80. He's turning 80. His 80th birthday, and it seems like he was turning 90.
I have that same note. I was like, wow, he seems like, I know, I'm probably because when you look at our political landscape,
Correct.
There's a lot of people in their, 70s and 80s running our country. Mm-hmm. And it's like, then when you look at someone who's turning 80 in 1981, getting lost in the woods.
Right.
is, a little like, oh, it feels different.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and yes, because, my mother-in-law is just she's just a very positive person.
Yes.
She takes care of everybody. She takes care of him. She's friendly to everybody.
Yeah.
She's just, a social butterfly. And she's just a great, really positive person. Just a positive person in general. And then he is a little less positive. Mm-hmm. And I think that he's dealing with a lot of the same frustrations as Norman is dealing with in the movie, where he's getting older and he's losing his mind a bit, mm-hmm. and he's getting frustrated because he can't do the things that he wanted to do, but he still thinks he can. Yeah. So, and then he gets frustrated when he can't, and he gets upset if people are asking, oh, you can't drive or whatever. It's like, gets very angry, like, of course I can drive, but we all know you can't drive. Yeah. That sort of thing. So it's, again, exaggerated versions of both of them, but they reminded me a lot throughout the movie. Yeah. But anyway, so it was, nice seeing them together. I loved him, on the phone with the operator. Was a little bit odd, but yeah. He's trying to establish where he's at. Right. I get it. I totally get it. I liked him just mumbling to himself, picking up the picture, who the hell's that? Yeah. That kind of thing. So fun. But I really welcomed when Jane Fonda and Dabney Coleman, who I forgot was in it, came with the child. I liked that, a little extra energy in there. I will say, I was pretty disappointed in Jane Fonda's character, Chelsea. I remembered her being so different. I remembered her being more in the right. Okay, you're shaking your head. Yeah. This is nice. So much more in the right, thinking oh yeah, he's so mean to her. But really, she comes across as just this little brat. Whiny brat. Little brat.
Yep. Christina, the same note. That's a very much middle-aged lens. Mm-hmm. Because I was trying to remember, I remembered it being so sort of polished and poised. Yes. And has it all figured out. When you really realize she's kind of a mess. She's, she isn't, and I didn't catch this when I was younger. No. But through letters, you find out, oh, she's not visiting with the guy she was seeing after she left her husband. Right. It's someone even different now. It's her dentist. Yeah. And then she doesn't even mention he has a kid. Right. I mean, she's really, clumsy. She really, and I mean, there's a lot I can say. She asks them to watch her boyfriend's son because, well, he'll be bored in Europe. I'm like, well, that's quite the assumption.
Really? Yeah. Yeah.
So
maybe
leave him.
You'll be bored with him in Europe is more
exactly. Oh, but don't worry, he'll have a blast on a lake with 280.
Complete strangers.
Strange elderly people.
I actually question. I'm like, is leaving the kid for a month with complete strangers is that even legal?
Yeah, I don't know.
The other thing is, there's a very small scene between the son and the father, mm-hmm. where he's he said something to the effect of behave, or you're going to go back to your mother. Yeah. So.
Which is great parenting.
Which is so nice. It's so nice. And then, so what does he do? He leaves him for a month. Yeah. I just don't understand that decision at all. Yeah. Clearly,
the marriage is busted up and fragile. So it's the kid probably could use time with his dad, but instead he's leaving them with...
He's going to drop him off.
2 elderly people.
That he doesn't even know.
He's never met. Are you kidding me?
So that he can go
And also,
get married?
do you know how hard it is to plan a month in Europe? I mean,
I
Chelsea's...
don't, but you might know a little bit more about that.
Chelsea's situation, like, this had to have been premeditated.
Right.
Did what she asked them when she got there?
Well,
First of all,
what if they said no?
You also find out that she doesn't ever see them. She pops in and out every few years. I'm like, wow. So Chelsea's not a great character. She's not a great person.
No, she really isn't.
She's kind of just a baby. I mean, you shouldn't...
she's so whiny. And she's like, all he ever does is criticize me. All he does is criticize me. You need to grow up.
Yeah, she does.
You really need to grow up. She calls him Norman.
Yeah.
Which always bothers me.
I don't like characters that do that.
I didn't like that at all. They don't really talk about exactly why he was such a bad father, aside from, like, maybe just not being around.
Well, he did, I guess.
He called her fat.
Fat, yeah. And, like, never, no matter what she did, he's always like, just try harder, do better.
God forbid.
But, yeah.
But, yeah, she just came across as really, like, her arguments were really dumb.
It was bratty.
It was really bratty.
Yeah.
And I forgot the conversation that she had with her mother, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved that she smacked her. It was beautiful. And I love that she just called her out on it.
Yeah.
I might have written it down, but I don't know. But she's just basically just being like,
She takes no accountability.
Like, grow up.
She takes no accountability.
No.
And she's like, oh, he's just a miserable son of a bitch. And it was like,
that's right.
That son of a bitch happens to be my husband. And then Jane Fonda, or Chelsea, behaves how anyone would. She literally jumps in a lake. Yeah. She runs down a hill and jumps in a lake. So I'm going to go back to Norman getting lost in the woods, which is really harrowing. However,
oh my gosh,
a critique I have with this movie, and by the way, I did like it. I don't want to ruin anything, but it's like, this is not going to be just a shitstorm. But Norman gets lost in the woods, and one critique I have of this movie almost throughout, is the reliance on overblown music.
Oh my gosh, so much music.
It rarely to never matched the scene. Mm-hmm. This takes place in a lake house with elderly people. The music, it's like you're watching some safarian adventure. Or Jaws.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
There are a couple scenes where I'm like, this sounds like the music from Jaws. Whether it's like dramatic, him getting lost in the woods, whether it's like them just taking the boat out for a spin, and it's like this adventurous, and like, okay, you need to stop. Yeah. Like, you chose to make a movie about 80-year-olds. Have it fit the moment.
Yeah.
And I feel like the music is a real misfire almost throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And yet, it was nominated for an Oscar, so what do I know?
The music was?
Yeah, the score, yeah.
Wow.
I did like, and I know it's inappropriate, and I definitely didn't catch it way back when, all this talk about Miss Apley, the lesbian neighbor, who died, and I didn't obviously catch it when I was young. She's like, oh, she died. And she's like, oh, how old was she? She's like, and Katherine Hepburn says, 98. And Norman says, oh. Well, maybe there's something to a deviant lifestyle. and then when the kid,
he has some really good ones.
He does. And then the kid and Dabney Coleman are there. They're talking, and Dabney Coleman is terrified of the woods. He doesn't like being there. He's really scared. And Norman is like, but he's like, there's nothing to be afraid of. He's like, well, there's some bears. He's like, bears, and he's like, yeah, one of them ate the lesbian. One of them ate the lesbian down the street. And then there's another joke. And they all work. They're all funny. Yeah. And I know, but at the same time, it's like someone would be like, well, that's a little insensitive. It's, LGBTQ. And it's like, here's the thing. I am gay. And it is like, the jokes work. And also, no, you have to understand the audience, the person saying it, the character.
Yeah,
he is an 80-year-old cranky man. And
from 1981.
Yeah, in 1981, right. And so, I mean, to even talk openly, he could have said many worse words than lesbian, let's be honest, in 1981. But what's really funny is there's another scene, he's putting on a tie, and because they're on their way, coming over. Norman's putting on a tie. he steps out into the porch because Ethel is making loon calls.
Oh,
okay?
shit. Yes, yes.
And he's like, hey. And she's like, oh, wow. And, you know, she kind of compliments him. And I think, I'm going to get it wrong, but the gist is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Something along the lines of, like, he's getting dressed up, but they're not going out. She says, Norman, they're not getting here till late. I don't know if you need the tie. And he's like, oh, God. Now I just look like Miss Apley. Oh my God. All three jokes worked. Yeah. Very funny. Very funny. And you're right, Christina. He is very funny in this.
He's very funny.
Great timing.
I also liked Dabney Coleman in it too. I thought he was really good. Just a breath of fresh air. He was just really kind of bumbling and all that kind of, but then he ends up having this really good conversation. It starts off a little bit strange. I'm not sure I would ever have a conversation like this with somebody, but he is basically asking permission to sleep with his daughter.
Really messed up.
So,
I didn't like that.
Don't do that. Yeah. That's not something. What is he supposed to say? Yeah, sure. And his response, I wrote down because I laughed.
Yeah.
He says, Norman says in response to this, I'd be delighted to have you abuse my daughter under my own roof.
I wonder if Chelsea, we talk about this, I feel like we talk about this more and more than we ever have before, about character ages. Mm-hmm. Like, I wonder if Chelsea was 10 years younger.
Yes.
Than her insecurities, her whininess, her brattiness, and even this conversation we're talking about would have made a lot more sense.
But when you think about it,
weird.
Like, how old is she supposed to be? Because he's 80, right?
So
she must be about 40? That's if they have her at 40.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's true.
So if they had her later in life.
That's true. That she would have been even old. She's definitely not 40 in this movie.
No, she's not. It was a weird, I mean, I know they're real life, daughter, father, daughter, but it was. That's
true. That's a good point. So maybe just don't make him 80. Like, make everyone a little bit younger.
I think everyone should have been a little bit younger. I think having him be 70, it's his 70th birthday. Like, I could see, and even just like kind of losing his mind a little bit. Mm-hmm. I could see him being a little bit upset. I mean, back in 81. I think 70 today is a little different.
Yeah. Look at Jane Fonda.
70, right? No kidding. What is she
84?
So it's just it was the ages, we do talk about that a lot lately.
Yeah, but it's like because sometimes it just makes more sense, like because you're almost like you want to understand the character,
right?
But when their behavior, and this is clearly a middle-aged lens, that their behavior is so incongruous. Wow, who am I?
Look at you.
So to their being, it's just a very strange thing.
It really is. And she's so insecure.
She's very insecure.
So whiny and bratty, like we said.
Like you referenced the bikini. I mean, she is Jane Fonda is just she's gorgeous anyway. But yeah, so she's insecure, and you wonder because she's being called fat, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat. But it's like, and then they show her in the bikini and it's like, then you wonder, oh God, is she like thin because her father called her fat?
Right, but they never delve into any of that stuff.
And it's kind of weird for a movie that's supposed to be a play because plays are exactly the platform where you get introspective. Like where that character says, here's what I'm feeling. That's the setup of a lot of plays. So I feel like because we don't really have more information, you kind of lose a little bit of something there.
Yeah, and honestly, like him calling her fat, I honestly kind of took it as like a joke. It didn't feel like he was actually calling her fat to me. But I'm not his daughter, so I guess it's taken a different way.
It's never a good thing to be called.
I did get annoyed with her calling her mother mommy.
You can't win, Christina. It's either Norman or mommy.
Or mommy.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah, I don't like it anyway. I don't like calling your parents parental
adult.
names. Yeah. I feel weird. So, you know what's funny for me? I call my mom Ma. Like Ma.
Yeah, I always said Ma. I always call her Ma.
But when I text, I feel really weird writing Ma.
Yeah.
It looks weird to me.
I never had to text my mom. She never had a...
Oh.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Oh my God, Christina, stop.
Wow. I might need to take a break.
But can I tell you, though, with Norman, though, is not too dissimilar than your dad in terms of physicality.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree?
Agreed.
Like very tall, and
Yes.
kind of similar to Carl's dad. Got the same
A
kind
nature
of
guy.
nature guy,
Yeah.
outdoorsy.
Definitely not
tall.
grumpy, though. My dad
No,
was
your
never
dad was
grumpy.
not grumpy. When the kid does show up and they're talking about their birthdays, and he's turning 80, and the kid says, "Oh, I turned 13," and Norman says, "Oh, we're practically twins." And it's while their backs are to the camera and they're walking up the stairs. It's such a throwaway little line,
But it's
so
good.
cute. It's very
It's
cute.
very cute.
Yeah.
I do have another note about that when he asked to have sex with her.
Oh, sorry.
After,
yeah.
No, it's
Went
okay.
way
It's-
off.
So he had just said, he had said that line and all this. But then it was nice to see Dabney Coleman's character, Bill,
Mm-hmm.
stand up to him.
Completely.
And and it wasn't like disrespectful.
No.
It was a really nice way to just be like, look, I'm not going to be picked on.
Yep.
And he's just like, look, I know you're making fun.
Yeah.
I know you're trying to do this stuff, but this is just the way it is.
Yeah.
And I really liked that they threw that in there because now he's not that bumbling guy anymore. He's actually like a stand-up guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked his relationship with Norman, just in that one scene, better than I liked Chelsea's relationship with either one of her parents.
Yep. It's like level setting.
Yeah.
It's like you can stop the picking because I'm not your kid. I'm a grown man, and it's not going to be that way.
Yeah, it was nice. It was great.
That was good to see. And also a big time saver because clearly he cares enough about Chelsea to want this to be a real long-term relationship.
Yes.
So he's like, I'm going to nip it in the bud right now because Chelsea's already told me everything about you.
And I'm sure she's told him a lot.
And probably the worst versions of it, too.
Right.
I laughed out loud when Norman says, they're all going on the boat and then skinny dipping. Then Norman says, I'm just going to stay here and enjoy the quiet. And Bill says, me too. And then Norman says, with Bill. And just a funny, and again, that comedic timing of Henry Fonda, it's really fun.
Well, it doesn't seem like a line. You know what I mean? It just seems like a
1,000%.
conversation.
Yeah,
it just seems like
1,000%.
something he would say.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me to hear that he improvised that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
It
yeah,
just seemed
true.
very, very natural.
Yeah.
I don't think it was improvised, but it felt very, very natural. I wrote, Jane looks great in a bikini, and she definitely knows it.
Oh, God. Yes. Yeah.
She's like, woo!
Yeah.
Look at my body.
Yeah.
And then the guy who obviously has a crush on her, the mailman or whatever, he comes around, and it made me laugh because he's like, hey, Chels, you want to ride? She's like, yeah. And she goes over on the boat. Did you see the ride? He basically just turned the boat around.
Oh no! I think he meant okay. So yes.
She jumps on
He
it.
just drove her over to the dock.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
I'm like,
I thought the
what?
same thing because she hugs him from behind and is like rests her head on his back, and I'm like, holy shit, that's like awfully a lot.
She's naked.
But all
practically.
he was doing was just like giving her a ride to the dock. That was very, very funny.
Oh, and I wrote some dialogue about what Mom said to her. She goes, oh, yeah, your father was overbearing and your mother ignored you. What else is new? Life marches on.
Don't you think it's
I suggest, life marches on, Chelsea. I suggest you get on with it.
Yeah.
Like, I loved it.
Chelsea's too old to be.
It's too old. Like, enough
way.
of this.
Stop complaining. Take
Enough.
charge. Like
we get it.
Yeah.
We get it. What'd you think of Little Billy?
So funny. I remember him like not really being crazy, but I remember being such a jerk to
I
these
didn't really like him either.
Oh no, back then.
Back then,
Okay,
yes, yeah.
He's a total kid now.
Yeah.
I'm like, actually, it's actually a good performance.
I thought it was a great performance.
And
I
I
even
didn't-
looked it up to see if he had done anything else. He really didn't do much after that.
Oh.
But
Is he related to the McKeon family? Like
no,
the
he is
Nancy
not.
Okay.
No, he is not.
But I really liked him. I was like, he's pretty natural.
Yeah.
And
I thought he was great.
A good, a good sort of a plot device, if you will, for Norman's character. And it was like, you know what? This feels legit. He doesn't really want to be there, but he's like, okay, fine. Like, it did never felt movie kid, and I was so
no, it really
glad.
didn't. And I liked that he was kind of a punk, but not too much of a
No,
punk.
he wasn't.
Like,
He's not a
like
rude.
he swore a little bit.
He's not a rude kid.
But
He's not being rude to them.
But I think that Norman needed that.
Yeah.
Like he needed that little edge, the kid to have a little edge to him.
Yeah.
So that he felt a little bit more even keeled with him.
When the scene with the fire happens, in my memory, I remember the kid like really yelling at Norman and saying really hurtful things. It didn't happen. He's like, it wasn't my fault. That's all he said. And I was like, in my memory, I was like, oh, doesn't he say, it wasn't my fault, you old bastard. It was your,
right.
you know.
Storming
like,
out.
Yeah, right. It wasn't that dramatic. It was a little scary, I think, because there's two elderly people trying to put out a fire. But like, you know, it wasn't as intense as I remembered. It was funny.
Yeah, no, it wasn't really that much. Yeah. I mean, you saw it coming from a mile away, but it wasn't that.
No, and even Katherine Hepburn's character is like, Norman, you're trying to burn the house down.
Right.
Yeah, so you know nothing bad's going to happen if they're using a line like that. Yeah. Although, really? You're grabbing the bucket of fish to put it out? Come on, kid.
Really?
Who ever wants to go skinny dipping with his dad's girlfriend?
Oh my God.
No. He was all excited. That's weird.
Yeah, it was weird. And her mother, too, right? Wasn't she skinny dipping with her?
Yes.
I mean, honestly, I think he would have said no.
By the way, Katherine Hepburn was 74 when she made this movie. Mm-hmm. She did all of her own stunts.
Good for her.
Diving off the boat into the pond to save
That doesn't surprise
Norman.
me at all, actually. Yeah. She was quite amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Quite amazing. And you probably have it in the trivia, though, that Henry Fonda had died a few months after this.
Nope.
Oh my God. Seems like an important thing to write down. I'll look it up.
Well, I remember I did know he was sick when they were filming.
Yeah, he died. Let's see. Henry Fonda.
I did forget all about Suck Face.
Oh my God, me too.
I forgot all about that. It was so funny.
Me too. And that was like a big thing back then.
I wrote, go Jane in the bikini.
He died. Oh, I know, right?
Yeah.
I know.
It's amazing.
She made like a statement with it.
Was
like,
she?
It wasn't
yeah.
like
At one
she
point,
just took her
she
shirt
like
off.
yeah. At one point, she
was like her legs are up
in it. Yeah.
I mean, that's why I said
not
she knows
not
it.
Very insecure
Not
in
at
those
all.
scenes. Yeah.
So he died on August 12th, 1982. So when did this come out?
81, December.
So yeah, it was only a few months after.
So he was too sick to accept the Oscar.
Yeah.
I think Jane accepted it for him. Oh boy, this was a chunk of dialogue. Chelsea, you seem to like beating people. Ugh. Ever wonder why that is? But then, as if that's not enough, the music's like, duh, and it's like, come on, music.
God, yeah.
Like, stop. Like, just stop it. We're all grown-ups. Like, that because the dialogue is so heavy, it's like one or the other. It doesn't need the music.
Yeah.
Oh. He's Billy Jr. is taking the boat out, which they're like, oh, Norman, it'll be fine. He has... They're not even a life jacket.
Well, I wrote this throughout my notes. No one owns a life jacket. Not one person in this entire movie has a life jacket on or in the boat.
And he takes it to like Lake Winnipesaukee. Like you cannot. It is no longer what.
So it's Lake. It's actually not Lake Winnipesaukee. It was Squam Lake, is where it was filmed.
Christina, I was just making a joke.
Oh.
Winnipesaukee is funnier than Squam as a word.
Well, I thought you were saying they were going to take it to Lake Winnipesaukee.
Oh, no. But I'm telling you, the lake, when he goes like spinning around in circles, that doesn't look like the same pond as Golden Pond. Like, meaning, I think he took it much further out.
He took it for a big ride.
Yeah, thank you. That is my point.
Thank you. We'll make it a little clearer next time.
Oh, my God. How clear is this?
So going through the rocks.
Oh, right. That's my next note.
I just said, you know what? That's not very smart. But I see. So again, this is another thing I could see my father-in-law doing. Because he's been through it a million times. He can still do it. Oh. And even going out when it's like about to rain. Like,
Carl's dad.
They get very stubborn.
Same.
Very
Carl's dad's the same
stubborn.
way. Phil, our tenant. We have a tenant.
Does he listen to this?
No, I don't think so. But hi, Phil. I mean, so he is in his 80s, and well, you know, New England, you get blizzards.
Yep.
And he really wants to help. And he's like, no, I have great shoes. I have great shoes. And it never fails where I find myself screaming like a psychopath at my tenant, being like, stay back. And sometimes I'll even be like, it's really slippery when, you know, not quite like, but it's like, I just can't, like, I feel like there's a certain point in life, you break your hip, you die. Yeah. Like, right? You hear about that shit all the time. It's like, oh, they fell, they broke their hip, they died. It's like, Jesus Christ. So I just don't want that on my conscience.
Exactly.
And Carl's dad, though, same thing. He'll, like, he's very outdoorsy. He will grab 2 walking sticks, a walking stick on each hand. And he's like walking, and I'm like, you're walking on terrain I wouldn't even walk on right now. But I think, and is it stubborn, or is it like, I want to prove to myself, I'm not going to let it get me down.
I honestly think it's something they're ingrained in, especially that generation. Yeah. Because my father, 94 years old, was still trying to shovel his walkway. I'm like, Dad, don't. But, like, they're so independent and do their things themselves. And he lived alone. Yeah. So he didn't want to wait until somebody came over or whatever. But, like, he would still be doing all of these things that he'd climb up and, you know, fill the bird feeders. I'm like, Dad, come on. Yeah. Like, one little move, even as fit as he was, like, you could just slip and fall. Yeah. And no one's here. What are you going to do? Scream on the front lawn? Like...
Well, he wouldn't have anyway. He would have crawled back into the house or
probably.
Something. Yeah, because he's a man, for God's sake. Yeah.
Exactly. So, so very, very believable that this Norman guy wanted to continue to go through the rocky terrain.
But I will tell you.
And then climb up on the boat to... I'm like, no. Even that
Billy.
Kid.
Even Billy knew that was a bad idea. Yeah. Also, too, it's like, have they never seen a movie before? It's like, I just kept writing, it's like, okay, it's not enough there's a storm. Now you're going into, like, the rocky patches. Then you're finding a dead loon. It's like, turn back.
It's like, everyone is screaming. It's like in The Wizard of Oz. Turn back.
This is...
the trees.
This is called foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I think I would call the trip over when I find a dead duck blocking my path. Yeah. Yeah. God.
Yeah, and then it went from so scary to I kind of chuckled. Yeah. Because the scariness, like, oh my god, he put it in the wrong gear. It goes zoom, hits the rock, and then he goes flying in the air
on a rock. Bleeding head.
Good Lord.
So, but I will say, though, that kid, I felt bad for him because I'm like, I totally would have fucking done that. When you're trying to do something and someone's yelling at you, you panic and you fuck it up. It felt so believable to me. Yeah, it was done well. I think, Kristen, this is weird, and I don't know enough about first aid. It seemed like the blood wasn't just washing off his head. This is such a minor thing. Yeah. But the blood stayed there. That was weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it was still bleeding.
Yeah, maybe.
But it should be dripping down more.
And also, when it was all dried and healed, it was a little Band-Aid covering it. He bled a lot.
Right, so maybe, I don't know. Maybe it was just I don't know.
My next note, Chelsea is an interesting brat. My middle-aged lens. Why is she even doing all of this? Is it just for attention from her dad? Is it out of spite for the childhood she thought she never had? It is not clear. But wow, she shows up, dumps the kid, she leaves her husband, she's getting married, she gets married in Brussels, she involves her parents in none of this. Nothing. Except the part that requires her to be accountable and responsible. I would have loved a deeper conversation with Henry Fonda and Jane Fonda where he says, it's about you taking responsibility for something. Yes. It can't always be the other person. We know that Chelsea has left her husband, left her other boyfriend, now has a dentist person, ditching the kid, and she got married. There's just I think one thing this movie's missing is that awareness for Chelsea. Like, it's like, girl,
somehow
you want to be treated like an adult, but you don't make any adult decisions.
Right. I was a little bit let down with the conversation that resolved everything between her and Henry Fonda. I was very short, very quick, very nothing to it. I feel like it could have been a little bit better.
Two things. One is, you can't get blood from a stone. Oh, whoops. But no,
Oh my God.
No. So
Henry get blood from a stone.
Henry Fonda. Yeah, right. Henry Fonda's character, he's not the biggest wordsmith we've ever seen on screen. I think it would have been a little weird if he was completely lucid and had all these reasons, right?
Right.
But I completely agree, because what you're left with really needs to satisfy, and it does not satisfy.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, I know that is not in the script. Jane Fonda reaches out and touches his arm. That's not in the script.
Okay.
And after that happens, you'll notice Henry Fonda just looks down almost for the rest of the scene and that conversation. He wasn't supposed to look down either. He started getting emotional. They had a very fractured relationship, the Fondas, and she felt it was just a moment where something took over, and she reached out to touch him because she felt it was getting almost too real. They didn't talk this way,
right?
And so, and I guess she had a rough upbringing. I don't know. I have not read any of her memoirs or anything, but yes, all that to say, I wanted more of a conversation there, but at the same time, like, would it have felt too movie-ish if there was more of a conversation there? I
did like when he was like, I just thought we didn't like each other. Because that seems pretty real.
I like when Ethel says, Norman is 80 years old with heart palpitations and has trouble remembering things. When do you expect this friendship to begin?
Yeah. Yep.
Is it weird that Chelsea isn't a little more thankful since they watched the kid for a month?
Oh my God.
She doesn't.
Thank you.
She doesn't say thank you.
No. It's expected, I think, of her.
Bill doesn't even fucking come back.
He doesn't come back. I was surprised about that.
That's so weird to me. It's like, how about...
Like, why wouldn't she?
Oh, he had a conference. It's like, what about saying thank you?
How about picking up your kid?
Oh, how did you go back to your mom's? I'd be like, yeah, she picks me up. Like, I mean, like, what?
It's crazy.
Come on.
It's such a weird thing. Like, talk about relationships between, like, parents and children.
Yeah.
How much better would it have been if he had a real healthy relationship with little Billy?
Yep.
And it was something that all of a sudden...
juxtaposition
that's what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
But no, it's just as unhealthy as the next guy.
I did love the scene where he apologizes.
Who apologizes?
Norman apologizes to Billy Jr. He yells at him. And he's like, you don't have to yell at me. And he's like, I'm sorry.
That was nice.
Yeah. And it didn't feel like a movie moment. There was no music, blessedly. And so, but yeah, I thought that was good. Yeah, but just kind of strange. I didn't like that there was just the handling of, like, watch this kid for a month. I feel like it's like, holy shit, where are these conversations?
Right. There's a lot of conversations behind the scenes. It's funny, I wrote, one conversation and a backflip makes all the bitterness disappear.
And I'm so glad she said it was a bad backflip. Because it was not even a backflip. It was terrible. Awful. Maybe she lost some weight. So believe it or not, I don't have very many notes. My last note is about the last scene.
The heart attack? I forgot the end. I'm like, does he die?
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons why I like this movie so much when I was a kid is because he doesn't die.
Yeah.
And that scene is so emotional, but it's also funny.
It's so funny.
When she's like, what is it, Norman? What is it, Norman? And then she goes, what is it, Norman? Because he keeps going, Ethel, what is it, Norman?
Well, and I love that they're, like, talking, and then he finally says, maybe we should call a doctor.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, somebody call a doctor.
And then she brings the phone. It's a rotary phone, and your heart just sinks because, like, oh god,
He's never.
And then she's like, oh, this operator. Oh, I thought that actually might be my favorite scene between the two of them.
Yeah.
It is
definitely mine.
Wrenching. It's dramatic. It's funny, and no music.
Yeah, it was definitely my favorite scene between the two of them. It had everything you want.
Yeah. Thought that was really well done. I think Katherine Hepburn is fantastic in that scene. It's
Yes.
so many emotions.
Yeah.
And the realization, and she even says that later on, the character says, it was the first time I thought
Right.
you weren't going to be there. And
Right.
that you feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very sweet.
Yeah, she
sweet
was
scene.
excellent in this. I just didn't like that first
It's a little tough to get
scene.
into.
Yeah,
because it's very,
that
very,
over the topness.
very
I just
stagey.
wasn't-
Well, it's also, too, it's a
But she
little...
mellows throughout.
She
She
completely
definitely mellows throughout.
And she also, I think the kid does that. 'Cause I think the kid mellows Norman out. Norman isn't as miserable with the kid
Yes.
around. So, but the other thing was, I think on top of the vocal variety she dishes out in the beginning, she's also doing kind of crazy things. Like she's like lifting up like a big piece of wood out of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
She's picking berries. She's like out there making bird calls. Like it's a lot for one character
Yes.
within the first 20 minutes of a movie.
Yes.
She's this like Wonder Woman, basically.
Yep, she's
yeah.
undoing the house. She's getting it all fixed up.
All by herself.
Walking
pretty
around.
Much.
I did have one note that just said, Catherine still moves around great. So it was definitely noticeable.
Yeah, I mean, 74.
74. Good for
74.
her.
And I think there are actually many scenes where she's quite beautiful. Like, very movie star.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
She always had that
Yeah.
that to her, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
Great bone structure.
yes, absolutely.
Any other notes?
I do not, but I do have a match game. Do you
Well,
have
wait,
any?
no. More,
Oh, right.
less, or about the same?
Oh, my goodness. It's kind of tough. I think it's more for me
Okay.
because I just appreciated the relationships a little bit more between, like Norman and Ethel, not Chelsea. Chelsea annoyed the hell out of me. But I think, just being able to recognize what a little brat she was.
Yeah.
I appreciated that part of it.
Yeah.
And I liked Billy. And here's the thing. At the beginning of the movie, I'm like, it's 2 hours. How am I going to get through this, right? I was really I was worried because I remembered it being like a slower pace. It was over like that for me. All of a sudden, it ended. I was like, wow, that was fast.
You're... completely agree. I was not bored at all. And the other thing was I left out the scene of the gas station with the boat.
Yeah, with the
and I
teenage
always
guys,
hated that scene.
That's a terrible scene. I don't like it
terrible
either.
scene. But I remembered it so differently. I remembered that Billy was part of the scene too. He's
no.
not. But I didn't like it at all. And also, one thing that I was like, holy shit, through my middle-aged lens, I was like, damn, $19. And they said they told them 38. I was like, that's quite the lie.
Yeah.
Like, they could have said 25.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And for Norman, who's we know is a penny pincher, because he says later on, he's like, how much you charge for a filling? Like the dentist. So it's like, why was he comfortable paying that? He didn't question it at all.
Right.
Anyway. So for me, it's the same, because I really loved it when I was younger, and now there's been some flips, like things I liked better, things I liked less, but it's the same. It's still worth watching. I believe it's currently on HBO Max or Max.
I watched it somewhere. I forget where.
So you have a match game. You said I do as well. Do you want to go first?
Sure.
All right.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Norman was so mad about getting old.
How mad was he?
Thank you for asking. He was so mad that instead of blowing out the candles on his cake, he blinked.
Ding.
Okay, Norman was so mad about getting old. He was so mad that instead of blowing out the candles on his cake, he...
threw it in the pond.
Hey, that's not too bad. I said blew up the cake.
My second one was spit. He just spat on it.
That's gross.
All right, I have a match game.
Okay.
Here we go. The Thayers are so old.
Oh, so how old are they?
The first boat they put on Golden Pond was blank.
Ding.
The Thayers are so old, the first boat they put on Golden Pond was blank.
The Mayflower.
Oh my God, that's so good. It's so good. I went older. Noah's Ark.
Oh, okay.
That's good, Christina.
Very good. Well, same idea. Same idea.
So
that was on Golden Pond.
And that's it for us and for this episode of Old Roommates.
Thank you for listening. Please remember to follow us on Instagram or YouTube, where we have our episodes as well as a little extra.
And if you have any questions about our show, any suggestions for movies we could revisit, reach out to us at oldroommatespod@gmail.com.
Thanks again for listening.
This is Brian.
And this is Christina. Until next time.